your Exhibit 10 for you. The record should further reflect that your Exhibit number 9 was given to counsel during the testimony of Ms. Zinn. Anything the record for the state?
No, Your Honor.
Anything the record for the defendant?
No, Your Honor.
You may invite the jury in. Witness with defendant.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Madonna, when we left off, you were talking about your pregnancy with Isabel. At that point in time, you were 38, correct?
I was.
And I guess medically that's considered advanced maternal age.
Right, advanced maternal age.
So did that cause any health issues with either you or Isabel as the pregnancy went on?
Sorry. I was sick pretty much the whole pregnancy with Isabel. The first 2 pregnancies had been very easy for me. And, but this time it was 11 years later and my body didn't take it as well. And so there was a point where they actually started losing her heartbeat. So I would have to start going in every week. They would hook me up to the machine and monitor her heartbeat every week, and that was terrifying to sit there and listen as all of a sudden her heart would stop briefly. So that was very difficult.
And did you have any other issues discovered at that point in time during this pregnancy?
No, the rest of the pregnancy was fine. The delivery was really difficult. I guess there were several complications for me in the delivery. And they had to induce labor. I mean, there were all kinds of like small complications and stuff. So it was the most difficult pregnancy for me. And so she was born April 7th, 2005.
April 7th of 2005?
Yep.
And that is, what is her full name?
Isabel Madonna Pritchard.
Okay. And that is Chuck Pritchard's daughter, correct?
Yes.
Your Honor, may I approach?
Yes, ma'am. I mean, yes, sir.
That's fine, it's fine. It's been the lady show this whole time. So. Your Honor, if I may approach, mark defense exhibit number 1. Ms. Madonna, if you can take a look at what I've marked as defense exhibit number 1 and let the jury know what that is.
This is a picture of myself and my 3 girls that we took for Valentine's Day in 2013.
And does that fairly accurately represent the picture of you and your 3 girls on Valentine's Day of 2013?
It does. And it's the first time that we had a picture taken by ourselves in a long time.
Your Honor, I asked to move defendant's exhibit number 1 into evidence.
No objection.
Motion to introduce the evidence is allowed.
All right. And just do it from your chair there, Ms. Madonna. Can you turn the picture towards the jury and point out who those people in the picture are?
You want me
Ladies
to,
and gentlemen, can you see well enough, or would you like her to stand down?
you want me to stand up?
Everybody happy? Okay.
Stay like this? It's okay?
You can stay like that
I
because
stay like
it's a
this?
big picture.
That's me. And this is my oldest. This is Rachel. And this is my middle one. This is Michelle. And the little one is Isabel. And she's wearing a necklace that she and I made together. So that's that.
All right. And we've already talked about, and we've seen Rachel here in court throughout these couple of weeks, correct? Or
Yes.
this week and a half, correct? And you said Michelle is the daughter with the blonde hair and the green eyes on the left-hand side, correct?
Right,
And Isabel is the youngest daughter, correct?
right.
And did you know anything about Isabel's, I guess, health issues then, or did those pop up later?
We didn't really start noticing anything about Isabel until she was a couple of years old. But before that, I got diagnosed with fibromyalgia. I think what happened was the pregnancy was so difficult on my body. I think my body didn't really ever recover from that pregnancy. And so September of 2005, I got hit with what felt like the flu, and I couldn't get rid of it. And so the doctors started doing all kinds of testing, and they started with Lyme's disease and multiple sclerosis and lupus, and they had to just kind of rule everything out. And then it was decided that what it was fibromyalgia. So that happened in the first year that Isabel was with us.
And describe for the jurors, and even me, people that don't have a clue, what is fibromyalgia?
I don't know the scientific definition for it, but it's nerve pain, and it affects my muscles. So I'll have muscle pain on both sides of my body. Mine mostly affects my upper body. My legs don't bother me so much. So that's every day. It's like a chronic pain. And I also, there's a fatigue that goes with it. It's not just being tired. It's like, I don't know if you ever had an x-ray at the dentist where they put that lead apron thing on you. It's like having that all over your entire body and trying to walk with that. So I'll get fatigue where I'm just wiped out and I'm in bed. And I get migraines from that. And it causes secondary stuff. And for me, was diagnosed with irritable bowel syndrome. So it's all kind of goes together. And typically it's found in women who have a high stress function type of thing. Like
You've dealt with a lot of.
Yeah, I run, I've kind of was organizing the whole family, and that's my tendency. It's the way I've always been. Yeah. And once I was diagnosed with fibromyalgia, my energy, I ended up with, it just made me a different person. I used to be able to I could go, and just my friends used to have a hard time keeping up with me, and now I can't. I'm the one I'm home by 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I can't do anything else. I'm in bed by 7 every night. I'm in bed by 7 o'clock. My girls will tell you.
And how did that disease affect your marriage?
That was horrible because all of a sudden Chuck had to start. He had to do more of the stuff, and it was difficult because Rachel wouldn't let him do anything. So I was still trying to run around, and I couldn't run around, and it was getting worse. And his daughter and I started having a lot of issues because I think her mom hadn't been in her life consistently for any period of time. And I was like, Mom, like a real, I was like in my kids' lives, and so she wasn't used to that. I think that was difficult for her. So Ashley and I had a lot of difficulties.
And was Chuck able to work full-time at this point?
Chuck was a full-time chef at the GE up in Ossining, New York, which is owned by, it was Dolce. Dolce was the catering thing yeah.
And at this point, after the birth of Isabel, are you able to work?
I was working part-time. Like I said, I was working part-time as a Weight Watchers leader, and I was also working part-time at a church. I worked there 10 hours a week. It was good money. I was able to work by myself. I did all their bulletin and stuff for them every week. They paid me well, and I got this to stay in this little office by myself. And I was back at work like 5 days after Isabel was born. I brought her with me and actually went, because I worked by myself, and I was able to take care of her down there in the office. So I never really stopped working.
And how was your dad doing at this point?
My dad was stable. He actually, he had, I forgot, he had been, he got diagnosed with diabetes the year after so in 2004 he got diagnosed with diabetes, but we found that out with like, he was almost passed out one morning, and we took him to the hospital, and he had like a 600 sugar. And so I learned all about diabetes.
What did you learn about it? What did you learn?
I learned, and he hated it. He hated the fact that I learned all about diabetes, because all of a sudden I wouldn't cook for him the way I used to. I changed his food all around, and he complained. Oh my gosh, my poor father. And I learned, I tried to make all kinds of stuff for him, sugar-free stuff. And, you know, he was really funny, because sometimes he'd come in the kitchen and be like, Joanna, my sugar's really low. Can I have a cookie? And I'd say, Dad, what's your sugar? And he said it was 78. And anybody that knows diabetes, like 80 is normal. So, you know, anyway, I took care of my dad's diabetes.
And are you guys you're still living in Westchester, New York, in your family home at this point in time?
Yeah, we're still in the house in Westchester, and we've started. I mean, the house was really old, and so there were a lot of issues. There was a lot of like electrical had to be replaced, and the plumbing had to be replaced, and everything was starting to get really run down on the house, and those are expensive things to fix. And so Chuck and I started doing a lot of bickering about the money, and the girls were getting older and they want to go out, and everybody in Westchester had the designer bags, and, you know, the kids were getting cars at 16. They were getting like BMWs, and, you know, that was the kids in the neighborhood. You know, we weren't raised like that. You know, my dad was a mechanic. He came home, his hands were greasy every day, you know, and my dad was blue collar guy. You know, we weren't wealthy like that, but that was the neighborhood that we were in. So Chuck and I started to consider selling the house with my father's permission, selling the house and buying something that didn't need quite as much maintenance.
And was the house already paid for by the time that Chuck even came into the picture?
Yeah, the house had been paid for by the time Chuck came in the picture. My father and I had eventually taken out like a home equity loan against it, but so we had a mortgage for a little bit, but it wasn't a big mortgage.
So it was paid off and clear by the time that Chuck.
Yeah, it was clear by the time Chuck was there.
All right. And how much were property taxes at that point in time in Westchester, New York, for your house?
Objection.
Stay.
What were your considerations in moving?
Well, we wanted to be in an area where it was going to be less taxes, and it was going to be less, you know, for the upkeep. So we considered selling and buying outside of that area. So we started looking in Rockland and started looking a little bit north. But the further north you go, it gets colder. And with the fibromyalgia, that was going to be, that wasn't going to be good for me. So we started looking south.
And what, any other family issues that caused you guys to start looking around and contemplate moving?
Basically, it was the stuff going on with Rachel. Michelle was getting really sassy, and Isabel was having issues, and I was sick.
So what did you think the move was going to do?
We thought that moving was going to make things a lot easier, especially financially.
Why did you guys pick North Carolina?
North Carolina had Duke and UNC, which supposedly had great like rheumatology stuff, and the fibromyalgia falls under the umbrella of a rheumatological issue. So that was one thing. It was far enough south where it would be warm, but I knew they still had Four Seasons here. And we looked at property taxes and stuff, and they looked like really, really good compared to what we were paying up there. And it just looked like, from what I knew about the South, it was maybe going to be not as hectic as where we were at in New York.
Was it not being as hectic as it was in New York important for your kids?
That was huge for my, sorry.
Go on.
Go on.
Now, we need a next question.
Oh, excuse me. I'm sorry. So you ended up moving to North Carolina.
Yes.
And how did your dad take the news of the move?
Objection.
Stain?
The family ended up coming to North Carolina, correct?
Well, my father had lived in that house, like I said, since 1967. It was his house. It was in his name.
Objection.
Not
Non-responsive.
responsive.
The family ended up moving to North Carolina, correct?
We all moved together to North Carolina. My father, my 3 daughters, myself, my dog, my cat, Chuck. We all moved together.
All right. And how much did you sell the house for in New York?
Objection.
Stain?
Your Honor, I'm trying to show that she had the finances and where the finances came to finance this move. The state the entire time has been talking about finances and motives and things like that and stealing Mr. Perez's money. I'm trying to show that she has her own independent money before we have even met Jose Perez.
Well, I will go on and allow it.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Open up.
And I will move quickly, Your Honor. How much did you sell the house for in New York?
We got $550,000 for the house in New York, and it was such bad shape that they knocked it down. It was on 3/4 acres. So the guy that bought it was able to knock down the house and then put 3 houses on that property. So we got $550,000 for that. We paid off the home equity mortgage that we had up there, and we found a house in Rollsville for $299,000. So, and we put the house, when we came down here, Chuck and I put the house in both our names.
And when you said you bought the house for $299,000, did you pay it all off immediately?
We paid the whole thing off with the proceeds from my father's house in Thornwood. So the house was paid off when we moved down to Rollsville.
And did you, when you came down here, you moved to Rollsville, so did Chuck's daughter move down here with you?
No, by this point, Chuck's daughter had decided that she was going to stay up in New York. She was in a relationship with somebody and she decided to stay up there.
So when you got down here, it's you, your 3 girls, Chuck, and your dad.
Right.
And how are you guys supporting yourselves once you got down here?
We had some money left over from the sale of the house, but as soon as we came down, Chuck started looking for work, and within a few months, he found his job at Carey Academy. I started trying to transfer all my teaching credentials down here so that I could get into the North Carolina teaching system. And that's a long process. So I just starting the process just took a couple of months.
Did you find a job immediately down here in North Carolina?
I got a part-time job as a freelance reporter for the Rollsville Buzz newspaper.
And what were you doing for that job?
I was writing between 6 and 10 articles a month. Whatever the editor asked me to write, I would write about whatever he asked me to write about.
And how long did you work at that job?
I had that job for 2 years.
And is Chuck able to find a job as well?
Yeah, Chuck was working full-time at the Carey Academy, and he still has that job. So he's been there since 2007.
And when you moved down here, are you and Chuck still involved in AA?
Yeah, we each found a group right away. I found a group in Wake Forest, and he found a group in Raleigh. And we still tried to make time to go out on a date at least once a week together to try to work on the relationship.
And you said you were trying to work on your relationship, but what was going on with your relationship at this point in time?
Well, we had hoped that the move was going to fix all the issues that we were having, and some things were definitely better in North Carolina. But the basic core of the relationship, there was just so much, there's just a lot of tension and stuff, and Isabel was getting worse at this point. Isabel had started having real behavior issues, and Rachel had been hospitalized. She'd been hospitalized twice in New York, and then down here she was hospitalized. She went to Holly Hill, and her relationship with Chuck was not any better than it was in New York.
And how did that affect your marriage?
This was all just, marriage was just deteriorating.
What were Isabel's issues that start to develop and manifest themselves?
I started dropping Isabel off at these little drop-off places where you can go and you pay like $8 an hour, and so when I had to go do something for the newspaper or whatever, I'd bring Isabel there for a couple of hours, and when I would come back, I started getting reports that she had been aggressive with the other kids. She was being defiant. She was having these tantrums that we would describe them as like meltdowns, where she would just, I mean, it wasn't even a tantrum, it was a full out, just like she would spaz out, and you'd look at her and it was like she wasn't even looking at you, like you were looking right, or she was looking right through you.
And you guys later found that to be autism?
Yeah, we found out at the end of her kindergarten year that she has autism.
And what ended up causing you and Chuck to split up?
There was no one big final thing. The strain on the kids and me being in the middle all the time, and it was just, we just never really, our relationship just continued to deteriorate. And it was hard because we loved each other. We still love each other. Chuck's one of my best friends, and I'll say that till the day I die. But we were not being good parents because we were arguing all the time, and so we decided to split in April of 2008.
And did you guys talk about the split and the separation before you guys ended up going your separate ways?
Yeah, we tried to not get separated for a long time. We had tried, and we had gone to therapy together, and he had gone to therapy individually. I had gone to therapy individually. He was talking to his sponsor. We were doing everything that we were supposed to do, and it wasn't making anything better.
And how did you feel going through another divorce?
That was part of the problem for me, was the stigma of going through a second divorce, and I just wanted to be, I just wanted it to work. I wanted to be the wife. I just wanted to, my mom, I had that example, and I didn't want to be a single mom again. It didn't scare me because I had done it for 8 years and I knew that I could do it, but I didn't want to be divorced again. I didn't want to bring my kids through that again. And it was very hard, for the kids being from a broken family, for Rach and Michelle. Because everybody else, their parents were together, and I was one of the only divorced women. So, but I had to get past all that and not worry about what other people thought about it and do what was best for my family.
And did you guys still have cordial communications after the separation?
Chuck, well, yeah. He was upset. He was upset to, he moved out and got himself an apartment. He didn't like the apartment, and he was, because he went from being in a, it was a nice, comfortable house, and we had a lot of space, and we had a yard, and we had the dog, and we had a fence, and, so to going into a little apartment after that was, yeah.
And did you start up visitation with Isabel and Chuck immediately?
We started right away. He had Isabel by that following weekend, and he would see Isabel from Friday to Sunday every day. Every week, Friday to Sunday, every week, no matter what.
And you guys eventually, you got separated and then got divorced, correct?
Yep, we got separated in April, and we got divorced the following September.
And you heard and listened to Chuck's testimony about the separation, correct?
I heard his testimony, yep.
And is it true what Chuck said about Jose Perez moving in the very next week after you separated from Chuck?
No, Jose actually didn't move in until the end of July, and
how long had Chuck been out of the house at that point?
3 months.
All right. And I think we're finally there, Ms. Madonna. Tell us when you met Jose.
The first time I remember meeting Jose was I was setting up a meeting, and setting up is when you go and you make coffee for the meeting, you set up the whole meeting, you put the chairs out and put the books out and all that stuff, get the coffee all set up for people that are coming in. So I was at the church about an hour before everybody else was there, and that particular day, Jose showed up right around that same time. So that was about an hour before the meeting started, and it was just the two of us in the church there in that room. So and that's the first time that I sat down and we had conversation, and he introduced himself, and we drank coffee, and he told me, we just introduced ourselves.
Okay. And what did you talk to him about?
He had a long time sober, and one of the things that I have the most respect for is when somebody's got a lot of time like that, And so I was just listening to his story about how he got sober, where he came from. He was from Puerto Rico. He had this accent, and me being a Spanish teacher, I love that, and I love all Spanish-speaking countries, and so we talked about that. He told me he was a retired assistant DA, that he had been an assistant DA in Lake County, Florida for 20 years, and that he had retired from that in the 90s. He told me he had been a chopper pilot in Vietnam, that he did 2 tours. He said he did 2 tours, he was released, and then he re-enlisted for 2 more years. So, and being that my father was a bombardier navigator, I loved hearing about all the planes and stuff. He told me he flew UE helicopters and Cobras. He talked about the Agent Orange, and how, how they had distributed Agent Orange, because I don't really know anything about it. So he was talking about Agent Orange. He was telling me about his family, and, his health issues, that he had diabetes, which my father had, so we talked about diabetes, and he was overweight. And so I probably made some suggestions about his nutrition.
You made suggestions about his nutrition that early on?
Yeah.
And then, did he tell you how long he had been sober?
Well, he said he got sober in 1974. So if that was 2008, he would have been sober 34 years at that point.
And in AA, what do you call people with that much time sober?
We call them old timers.
And that's just the AA name for
That's
those
just
people?
the AA name. I mean, I might be considered an old timer myself.
And at this point, did you have a new sponsor or anything like that in AA?
Yeah, I had a sponsor, and I had started, getting connected with women in the area, because that's one of the other suggestions is men with the men, women with the women. That's important, especially early on in recovery. So I had a sponsor that I was working with, and I was going to meetings all over and speaking at meetings, telling my story and stuff, trying to help other women get sober.
Okay. And what is a sponsor?
A sponsor's like a confidant. A sponsor is somebody that you trust with absolutely everything. This is a person that, because when we're drinking and using, what we do is we start keeping a lot of secrets, and obviously I was doing that for my entire life. So when you have a sponsor, that's somebody you tell everything to, and you're just bouncing things off them, and they make suggestions based on their experiences, and if they haven't had that experience, they'll tell you, well, why don't you go talk to so-and-so, because I think she's had a similar experience. So, and, you know, for most of us, this is the first time I ever had, you know, a woman who I trusted completely like that. You have to trust your sponsor. That's very important.
And is AA meant to be confidential?
It's an anonymous program.
Okay. And are you breaking rules of AA just by talking about this now?
I will tell you that I'm a member of a fellowship if you ask me.
And when Jose says he has this amount of time of sobriety and you have your amount of years of sobriety, do you still consider yourself to be an alcoholic?
Oh, absolutely. I'll be an alcoholic till the day I die. I'm a recovering alcoholic, though.
And what does that mean? Because typically it saying you're an alcoholic doesn't mean that you're drinking currently or that you drunk anytime recently?
That means that when I take any alcohol at all into my body, I experience something called a phenomenon of craving. And nobody who's not an alcoholic can understand what that is. But if I take any alcohol at all into my body, it opens up a craving, and that's all I want. And so it's a mental thing, but it's also a physical thing. I have a physical addiction, physical allergy. And it doesn't matter how long I have not drank. If I pick up a drink today, within a certain period of time, I'll be pretty messed up very quickly.
And that's the fear with alcoholics and people in Alcoholics Anonymous.
That's why we keep going. We're supposed to keep going.
And when you were talking to Jose, how did you guys' friendship progress?
He knew that I was relatively new to the area. He knew that I had been separated from Chuck. And he offered to pick me up with other people. He drove people to meetings. And so he offered to come by with a group of people and pick me up and start taking me to meetings. And I thought that was great because I didn't know the area, and this is an old timer. He's got all kinds of experience, and you know, so I was pretty honored that somebody with that amount of time would take the time to help me out like that.
And were you aware that if Jose was married at that point in time?
Yes, he was married. He told me he was married, that they met in elementary school. He told me that, well, it wasn't on that first time. I mean, the first time he did tell me he was married, yes. I did know that. But he would, over the course of the next couple of weeks, he would explain to me that they had been... I'm sorry. Sorry.
Hey,
And how did your relationship and your conversations go from that point in time?
So he started picking me up. It was almost every night that a few people would show up, and he'd come up in his Jeep, and there'd be a few people. Mostly it was guys, but there was another woman there occasionally. And we'd go from meeting to meeting, and they call that the meeting before the meeting, like when you're in...
Non-responsive.
hey,
Oh, sorry.
Just answer the question and then
My bad.
let me ask you another question.
All right.
All right. What was the next step towards, I guess, when did he ended up moving into your house?
He asked me if he could rent the bonus room from us. And I asked him...
Objection, non-responsive.
Your Honor, I think she's going to get, she's there. She just said
Need
two
a date.
sentences. Excuse me?
we need a date, and then you can follow up.
All right. Thank you. On what date did Jose move into the house?
He moved in about August of 2008.
And why did he move into the house?
He moved into the house because he was having very serious health issues at that point, and asked if he could come and stay with us. He had been diagnosed with terminal cancer and he had 4 months to live. He had let us know that at one of the meetings. And I talked to my family and I asked them if what they thought about that, being able to help this man go through the last 4 months of his life. And they said yes. So Jose moved in August.
Do you know why Jose would move into your house when he was already married and living separately in another house?
Objection.
Oh, she next.
He had told me that they were very unhappy. They had been living in separate bedrooms for the past 20 years, and that they didn't care about him. He said that his wife made him drive himself to the hospital while he was having a heart attack. And he was just so sad about having to spend the last 4 months of his life like that.
And when he was talking about he had cancer and this is the last 4 months of his life, how did that make you feel?
I felt so bad. You know, I felt like, especially when I found out that he had to drive himself to the hospital, you know, because knowing how sick my dad had been, you know, I couldn't see my father being alone in a situation like that. And I have never experienced cancer myself or have anybody that close to me have it, but I knew he was going to be looking at something really horrible.
And why did you feel comfortable letting a man that you hadn't known all that long move into the house with you and your family?
After the 3 months that we had been going to meetings together, I felt that I knew him pretty well. He had a nice reputation with people. You know, he was always helping other people and stuff, and I felt comfortable with him. I trusted him. He'd been around my family. He'd come around on a couple of times. He brought my father needles for his insulin.
And did Jose pay rent when he moved in?
No. He offered to pay rent, but I didn't have, well, there was no mortgage or anything on the house, but so we figured, you know, he could just help out with some of the bills and stuff, and that would be fine.
So were you thinking that it was just going to be a short-term 4-month period until Jose passed away, and then you were just giving him a place to live in?
I felt like I was committing to be there with this person for the last few months of their lives.
Was your relationship romantic at this point?
No.
I guess what was the relationship then?
Well, he was in the bonus room and I had my room and we went to meetings together. He was getting more involved with the kids. He used to like to color with Isabel and stuff. That was the big thing. He loved Isabel. He wanted to be there with her. And so he started getting more involved with the family.
And he would help out around the house and do things like that and run errands and things like that at that point in time?
Yeah, he especially loved doing the laundry. That was his thing, and he loved ironing. He always had his can of spray starch, and so he took that on. He took on the laundry, and he did all the outside stuff. I'm really not. Yeah, he did all the outside stuff. I did inside stuff.
And were you working at this point in time?
I had gotten a full-time teaching position. Yep, in Wake Forest in a Catholic school. Teaching Spanish.
And at this point in time, the relationship was still platonic, correct?
Yes.
And when did the relationship progress up from other than platonic between you and Jose Perez?
My brother asked if he could come stay with us for a little while. He was having some difficulties in Las Vegas in his relationship, and he asked if he could come and stay with us. So my brother came with his little dog Lulu, and so they were going to need the bonus room, and I asked Jose if it would be a problem if he could rent a room somewhere else, and he got really upset about that. And he said that he thought it was going to be very difficult with him with his the cancer, and could he and I share my room platonically?
And when your brother, and just remind us, what month and year is this in when your brother is visiting from Vegas?
This is like September, or it's right around September of 2008.
And once your Jose ended up sharing a room with you, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And was that platonic at first?
At first it was platonic.
Okay. And then how did things progress, or why did things progress from there?
He started making it very clear that he was attracted to me more than just as a platonic friend. And so I wasn't attracted to him physically, but I loved him. You know, he was sweet, you know, and
You guys started a relationship,
yes,
and you held yourself out as a couple?
yes.
And what kind of coupley things did you do together?
We went to dinner together. We go to meetings together. We were together.
And were you taking him to his appointments and doctor's appointments and getting involved in that part of his life as well?
Yeah, my big concern was what do I need to know about the cancer? How do I help you? How can I don't know what to do for you. So I said, you know, let me come with you to the doctor's appointments and I can talk to the doctors. And he said right away, he said, don't ask them anything. They're not going to talk to you. And I said, what do you mean they're not going to talk to me? He said, well, because we're not related, you're not my wife, they're not going to talk to you. So I thought that was strange. And I went with him to the doctors, and I didn't ask questions, but I was listening, and they never mentioned cancer. And so I started getting suspicious, and I was asking, you know, and then my sponsor said to me, my sponsor was a nurse at a hospital, and she said to me, Joanna, have you ever seen any proof that Jose has cancer? And I was so upset, and I said, who would need proof? I mean, why would you ask someone for proof that they have cancer? That's horrible. So I didn't ask him for any proof.
And did you ever, throughout your relationship with Jose, did he ever have an active bout with cancer?
No, he did not. So within 4 months of when he moved in, I finally put it all together that he had never had terminal cancer. He had had cancer, but not in many years.
And was that the first, I guess, big lie that Jose had ever told you?
Well, before I even found out about that, we had our first financial argument, and that was over a lie.
Okay.
So,
What lie was that?
so we had started merging our bills and stuff, and he got a bill for a really expensive car payment. And I said to him, I was like, wow, your car payment's $570? And he said, no, that's for 2 months. And I was like, oh, well, that makes sense. And then he got pulled for a speeding ticket, and I reached in the glove compartment, and I saw the payment book for the car, and the payments per month were $570. So the fact that he lied about it, that was a big red flag already. That made me very uncomfortable. And it wasn't about the money. It wasn't about any of that. It was the fact that he was able to look me in the face and say, that's for 2 months. So that was our first, that was the first real lie.
And at this point in time, you guys are still just dating, correct?
We're still just dating, yeah. And, I'm sorry.
Did you have any other bills come in or the notices from Jose that caused you concern?
Yeah, we started getting bills from his old house, and he had told me that he owned that house in Youngsville where him and his wife and his son lived. He told me that he owned the house. And I started seeing bills coming from somebody named Jesse, and I said, well, if you own the house, who's Jesse? And he said, Jesse is the administrator of my trust fund in Florida. And so he explained to me that Jesse was the guy that took the money out of the account. I don't know. It was complicated. So that was an issue. And then he got a call from the rent-a-center or something, and they came and repossessed the TV. And then he started getting the utility bills in his name from the other house. And I said, what's going on? And I said, do you need to pay these bills in the other house? And he said, no, my wife, her retirement, she's fine. She's got it. She's got this all taken care of. I said, well, why are you getting these bills here? So there was a whole lot of scrambling.
And how long had Jose been in the house at this point? Or, excuse me, how long had you known Jose at this point?
So Jose and I met in May, maybe at that meeting was in May. So June, July, August, September, October, almost 6 months I've known him at this point.
And at 6 months, you guys are just starting to commingle funds and pay bills together and jointly pay bills and things like that, correct?
Right.
So he had all these problems with collections and debt collection and repossessions before he even met you.
Yeah, I didn't know that, but yeah. And I'm sorry.
When you mean you didn't know that until you started seeing people, the bills and people come and repossess stuff.
Yeah, I didn't know that he was behind on any bills, and I didn't really realize it. Well, then the TV was repossessed, like I said, and then the Jeep got repossessed, and I was standing outside, just I don't know what I was doing, and the tow truck came, and I called him on the phone, and I said, "There's a tow truck here." And he said, what do they want? And I said, they said they're going to repossess your Jeep. And he said, well, just let them take it. It's probably a mistake. He's like, I paid the payment already, so that's just a problem, an error in their whatever, their financial thing. He said, so I'll straighten it out. And he wasn't able to straighten it out because I guess he hadn't paid the bill in so long.
And he had gotten this Jeep and started paying for this Jeep before he had met you?
Oh, yeah. And he was paying on another car. He was paying on his wife's car. And from what I understand, that had also been repossessed.
And at this point in time, just to be clear, that you weren't paying any kind of mortgage on this house, correct?
No, I wasn't paying a mortgage. I didn't even have a car payment at this point. My car, I had paid my car off when Chuck and I sold the house.
And that was before you met Jose?
Yes, before I met Jose.
When you found out all this stuff, did you ever try to kick Jose out or separate from him right then and there?
I did.
And when was that?
So that must have been when I finally figured it out about the cancer, probably by December, January, right about that time. And I told him to leave. I told him I couldn't do it. And he said he was going to kill himself, and that he couldn't live without me. And I told him, I can't do this. I can't be in this type of chaos. I said, I'm sober too long. You need to, I can't have this in my life. So he said, I'll do anything. What do you want me to do? What do you want me to do? And I said, just start with, do some therapy, and I agreed to just let him stay, and we're going to do therapy and try to figure it out.
Yeah. And did you guys do therapy and try to figure it out?
Yeah, he met with Dr. Zinn, and it started from there.
And we heard Dr. Zinn testify, and she said that you even came to a meeting with her, a group meeting. And I think at one of those early interviews, she said that you were still the girlfriend, correct?
Yes, I was still the girlfriend.
And you guys had made note that these financial issues and financial line was already causing a problem in your relationship.
Yeah.
So was that the first time that Jose threatened to kill himself?
That's the first time Jose threatened to kill himself.
Was it the last time Jose threatened to kill himself?
Jose threatened to kill himself every time I said I wanted a divorce. Subsequently over the next few years. So that happened at least three, maybe 4 times a year for the duration of our relationship.
And what was going on with the house and staying on it, staying in the house at that point in time? And just give us a date first, a date and a year.
Say again?
Give us when you started making new decisions about staying in this Roseville house, correct?
Right.
Which month and year was that?
So by the end of January, Jose suggested that we get married and buy a house together. And that was going to fix everything. Let him have a new life, forget all this stuff about the cancer. We're just going to go forward and go to, have a house. And so Chuck and I agreed to sell the house in Rolesville. And so we were going to start looking for a house together.
Okay. And this is after you know all this about the suicide attempts and you believe he's lying about cancer.
Yes.
Why did you think that was a good idea to continue with Jose?
Well, he was sober so long, and he had explained to me that these were patterns from his marriage, that he had been married a really long time, and the way he was behaving with me is the way he had behaved in his marriage. And I needed to give him time to unlearn some of those things. So,
and that's what you did?
that's what I did, yes. And I believed him. He said he was going to change, and I believed him. And because I've changed. I mean, I had proven to myself that you can change, and if I can change, anybody can change. So I really wanted to give him the benefit of the doubt and believe that he wanted to change.
Where were you guys planning to buy this house, you and Jose?
Originally, we were just looking right in the area, and Jose said, we went for a trip to New York. I took him up to New York with me one weekend, and he fell in love with New York. And he said, I have some property in Puerto Rico. He said he owned property with his uncle. They owned a sugar refinery thing in Puerto Rico. He said, let me sell my half. That'll be enough to buy a house up in Westchester. And we were so excited. That sounded like a great idea.
Did you tell the rest of the family that you were planning on trying to
We
move
got
back to New York?
everybody together in the family. We sat everybody down, and we said, we're going to go back to New York, and we're buying a house up in New York. And the girls were just ecstatic. They had really missed their friends and really, really missed their lives up there. So the girls everybody was on board. Everybody was excited.
And after all this planning, what happened to the plans of moving to New York?
We went up there, we got a contractor, we got an architect, we found property, we got a real estate agent, a real estate lawyer, we had assessments done, and it turned out that there was never any property and there was no money.
How did you know that?
I found that out the day that the lawyer got the contract back for the house, and his secretary called me and she said, Miss Madonna, do you realize that we got the contract back signed by Mr. Perez, but there's no deposit in here? And I felt like I just went cold, I just felt like everything just got pulled out from under me, that he lied again.
And how did that affect you and the family?
That was most difficult. I mean, everybody was affected in the family, my father, my kids. At that point, Michelle pretty much just decided she wasn't going to have anything to do with Jose anymore because her friends were all ready for her to come up. Rachel had even applied at Rye Playland, which is an amusement park up in that area. Rachel had applied at Rye Playland for a job already. That's how serious we were. So it was just devastating for everybody.
So you guys did not move to New York?
We did not move to New York. Chuck and I sold the house.
So where did you end up moving with this at this point?
Chuck was entitled to 50% of the house, but we sold the house for $220,000, and he took $80,000 from that. So with what was left, we found a rental in Wake Forest. which was on 7732 Kingsway Court. And I prepaid a year rent because my credit wasn't great from my student loan. And his credit, he didn't have a credit history, which was weird. He had a low credit score with no credit history. So I just decided to prepay a whole year rent. And so the whole family moved into the house on Kingsway Court.
Now, after you found this out and Jose, you said through his lies, had shut down the plan to move to New York, why are you still with Jose at this point?
Because I still think that it's not really his fault. He's got all these health issues. You know, he's been this way for so long. I've got to give him the benefit of the doubt. He can change. He loves me. I love him.
And then you said you moved to 7732 Kingsway Court.
Yeah.
And so do you remember how much that check was that you cut in order to pay for the rent for the full year?
I don't remember exactly. I know it was, we had 5 bedrooms and there was a whole apartment downstairs for my father. So I think the rent was maybe $2,500 a month. So I don't know the math for that. It was over $20,000. I'm going to say maybe it was $25,000, something like that.
And you used the proceeds from the house that you had with Chuck, correct?
Right.
And you paid the rent for that house, correct?
I
Or
did.
excuse me, the full year's rent for that house.
I paid the rent up front for that house.
And that is money that you had before you even knew Jose Perez, correct?
Yes.
Where did the rest of that money go from the proceeds of your house after you paid the rent for that full year?
I bought Jose a Jeep. I bought myself a car. I bought Rachel a car. And they were paid off because I didn't want any bills every month, you know, because I don't, that was just a problem, the car payments and all that stuff, you know. I wanted just not have to worry about this month-to-month stuff. It was very stressful. So after the cars, we bought furniture. My father needed a whole apartment full of furniture. So, but other than that, we just put it in the bank. And Jose and I had gotten I believe we had gotten our joint account by that point.
And are you guys married at this point?
We got married in September, so we had moved into the house in Wake Forest in July, and we got married in September. And I had gotten, I'm sorry.
Hold on just one second. So you moved in there in July, and I'm assuming that's July of
2009.
2009. So your lease was going to be there until July of 2010.
Right.
And you got married in September of
We
that
did.
year. Where did you guys get married?
We got married at the courthouse.
And did Jose buy your ring? Or did y'all get married, wedding rings and things like that?
We got, like, we went to Walmart and got the little silver wedding bands.
You didn't care about a fancy wedding ring at that point?
No.
And since you're married to Jose, after knowing all this stuff, what is the plan with Jose? What are you trying to do at that point?
I mean, we're gonna be married. We're gonna have a marriage.
And what were your plans financially with Jose at that point?
We were gonna buy a house together, and we were gonna do a life together.
Well, I guess I'm asking.
Okay.
You were renting the house at this point, correct?
Yeah.
Could you buy a house at that point in time with your credit?
No, not with our credit. He wanted to get a VA mortgage. That was in his mind. He wanted to get a VA mortgage. He told me he had owned a house down in Florida, but he hadn't had a VA loan yet. So that was he was focused on that.
Okay. So what was the plan to get a VA mortgage?
We had to work on our credit so that, because you had to have, VA is a zero down mortgage. So you have to have a certain credit score to be able to get that. So he had to get his credit score up to a certain point. And so we had to get all the things off his credit report, like the repossessions and the house in Youngsville had gone for collection also. So I paid those things off with the proceeds from the house. I paid off the Jeep that had been repossessed. I paid off his wife's repossession. And I paid off this guy Jesse up in Youngsville for the house.
And you said you got married September the 14th of 2009, correct?
Yes.
And you guys both got divorced the week before that or a few days before that?
Yes.
Why did you guys move so quickly to get married right after finalizing your divorces, respective divorces?
Well, one of the issues was Jose said that if there were any health problems, I couldn't do any of the stuff for him for the doctor, like if he was hospitalized or anything. So that was a big concern for him, was to make sure that I could be designated for him.
And did you have a problem getting married to him that quickly? Even after all this you knew all this?
I'm not going to lie, there were a lot of red flags.
But you continued on through that and you were trying to make things better?
Absolutely.
And were you, I believe his friend said as well that you tried to make him eat better and work out and things like that, correct?
Yeah, he hated that.
So how was the family dynamic going at this point in time in 2009?
2009, Rachel was still Rachel. Rachel, I had actually had to homeschool Rachel for a semester. She had started really getting fallen behind in school when she was at Nightdale. So I homeschooled Rachel for a semester. Michelle was living in the apartment downstairs with my dad, and from what I understand, there may have been some sneaking out. I'm not sure. I never caught anybody. But Michelle was not talking to Jose. Michelle was having nothing to do with Jose. Ever since that incident with the house in New York, Michelle wasn't really comfortable around Jose at all. Isabel had started really having apparent issues at this point. And as far as Jose and I were concerned, we were okay. We were going to meetings together and going to meetings separate. And he had started getting a little more uncomfortable with me going out, leaving the house.
How did he show that he was uncomfortable with you going out and leaving the house?
He would just ask me a lot of questions, and it sounded like he didn't believe me when I was answering, like, where are you going? I'm going to my sponsor's house for coffee. And, it was the way he came across as I could tell that he was not happy. And he was kind of silent about it when he was unhappy. There was just this look that he got in his face, and you knew that he wasn't happy.
Did we've talked a lot about Jose's son moving into the house. Was that around that time as well?
Yeah, I loved his son.
Did any complications come from his son moving into the home?
Yeah. He was legally blind, and our birthdays were right around the same time, and he and I got along real well. And so this was he was in there by Halloween. So, he was okay. His bedroom was upstairs, so that was a little scary that he had to come down the...
And non-responsive.
I'll move on, Your Honor. Did he ever have any medical complications during this time when he was in your house?
Yeah, he went into a seizure, like a diabetic stroke, at the dinner table one night, and he turned blue. He stopped breathing. I had to call 911, and they talked me through doing CPR and resuscitating him, and the ambulance came, and he ended up going into assisted living. After that, he went and moved in with another couple.
And your father is still living there at this point in time too, correct?
Yes, my father's there.
And he had his own health issues that you took care of too, correct?
Yeah, my father had ongoing health issues with the diabetes and the heart and his knees.
And was this year, for I guess your first year of marriage, relatively good?
There was just a lot, it was a lot, there was something always going on.
But you guys, were you working through it?
Yeah, we were working through it. Yeah, we were good. That was a good year.
And are you working still?
I was subbing at this point. All my subbing stuff finally came in, so I was able to start subbing within the county, and I was able to pick and choose what subbing positions I wanted, and he would take Isabel to Jose would take Isabel to daycare for me. And then if she got in trouble, he would go pick her up, and yeah.
And that was because Jose was home.
He was home. Yeah, he was retired.
And Jose was home because he had a disability from the VA, correct?
Yes.
Do you know how much money Jose was getting per month?
We had a joint account at this point. So you mean before we got married or when we got married?
Both.
Before we got married, I don't know what he was getting. As soon as we got married, he was getting like 2,000, I don't know, it was like 2,500 a month or something. But once he was able to add my girls as dependents, his benefits doubled. His benefits went up by $2,000 a month once
So-
he was able to add the girls to his claim.
So to make that clear, once you guys got married and they added your three daughters as dependents, his benefits went up from $2,000 a month to around $4,000 a month.
Yes. And that was all his name.
Were you guys still having financial issues in the house?
It wasn't so bad while we were at the house in Wake Forest because we were still okay. We still had a little bit of the cushion from Rollsville and, yeah.
And that was because you had already paid the rent for the full year at that point, correct?
Yeah.
Where did you guys go after this 1 year at this house was up?
We moved to Queensland Road in Wakefield and, sorry.
And why did you choose this house?
We chose Wakefield because Wakefield had a great reputation for having a good school district, and I knew that Isabel was going to need some special services, and so Wakefield had a reputation for having good special ed services, especially their autism programs.
And were you guys renting or buying this place?
We rented the house on Queensland Road.
And did you guys start having money issues again at this point since you're now paying rent once again?
Yeah, we started having money trouble again.
And what was going on with the finances at that point in time?
It was the same thing where, it was month to month and things were not getting paid. And I was teaching full-time at this point. I wasn't full-time. I was half-time over at Centennial Middle School. And so my salary was there and his money was there. And but we started arguing and so.
And did you tell Jose what to do with his money that he was receiving from the government?
No, I never told him what to do with I never asked him what he was spending his money on. When he would offer to give me money, that was great, but that was his money. He had earned that. He was a veteran. He earned that money.
And he did things for everybody in the family with that money, correct? Just to be fair.
Oh, yeah.
And he paid on car payments and paid bills and at least tried to pay bills and things like that, correct?
Right.
And you were also working as well, so your money went to a joint account.
Yeah. I didn't have as much as him, but everything that I had went into the joint account.
And your credit still wasn't good enough to buy a home, so you're spending this year still rehabbing your credit?
Yeah, it took us 2 years to be able to get the credit up. And we spent those 2 years on Queensland Road in Wakefield.
And just give me a month and a year again at this time. I know we've gone through your full life at this point, but what month and which year are we talking about?
So we're in 2010. So I'm going to say maybe around September of 2010, we're established in the house in Wakefield. Rachel had just started school.
And which grade was Rachel in?
Rachel just started her freshman year at Shaw University.
And we've heard a lot about Jose giving it, benefiting Rachel as far as school monies goes. Do you know anything about that?
Yes, Rachel gets, anybody that is entitled to that dependent education benefit, if you're enrolled in school full-time, you get $970 a month in your account. So it doesn't go to the school, it just goes to you to help with expenses and stuff.
And that's something that every disabled veteran's dependent is entitled to, correct?
Yeah, if they're entitled to that. There's a whole thing about like when were you in the service and was it active time and is the person disabled and, yeah.
And that money is going directly to Rachel, correct?
Right.
And other children in your house might be entitled to that, but they have to go to school to get that, correct?
Yeah, you can't get that unless you're going to school full-time.
Did you have insurance for Isabel before you met Jose?
Yeah, I had insurance for my kids when I met Jose. I had insurance for my kids through every job that I had.
And
Chuck also had insurance, which he said the other day.
and that was okay. Did you notice any point in time, or did you have any clues about Jose being unfaithful to you?
Yeah, I started to suspect that he was seeing somebody else.
How did you think? Why did you think that?
At some point I had heard him talking in Spanish on the phone, and I had asked him who he was talking to, and he was very vague about the answer, and he went in and took a shower, and I looked at his cell phone, and he had deleted all calls from the entire day, all text messages, and I thought that was strange, and I asked him about it, and he said, well, because I was an assistant DA, he said, I'm very conscious about security. He said, so it's my habit to delete these call logs. So,
Did you ever notice anything else about him that made you think he was cheating on you?
I noticed that he, occasionally he came home smelling like he had been having sex.
Did you talk to him about that?
I did.
And how did that conversation go?
He said that I was crazy and that maybe I'm the one who's cheating.
And did you guys kind of throw these accusations back and forth from time to time throughout your marriage?
We did.
And you heard his friend come up here and testify that did you call his friend at one point and ask to say, Jose's accusing me or something like that?
Yes.
So what happened after you had these conversations about his alleged infidelity?
Nothing really happened. I think he watched me very closely, and I was watching him also.
Was Jose a jealous person?
Yes.
How so?
Well, I was singing in a band again at this point, and when we would have a show, he would position himself, like if I was on the stage, he would actually come up where he was standing in front of the stage and turn around where he was standing here, and he was able to look at everybody in the audience, and he would kind of have this real like tough look on his face. And if I was talking to people, you know, like socializing between sets or whatever, he came right in. And it was almost like to make sure everybody knew that he was with me. And he would do that at meetings too. He would randomly start showing up at my subbing jobs. He would just, out of the blue, he would just show up. And I started to suspect that he was just showing up to see, you know, just checking up on me.
That's fine. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take our lunch and recess at this point. During our lunch and recess period, it's your duty not to talk among yourselves about this case. Duty not to talk to the parties, the witnesses, or the lawyers about anything at all. It's further duty not to talk to anyone else, to allow anyone else to talk with you, to say anything in your presence about this case. If you get any information about this case from any source, you need to let the sheriff know when you come in. Don't do any individual research or investigation on your own about any issue touching on this trial. Stay away from your smartphones. And do not form or express an opinion about this case during this time. That while everyone else court remains seated, I'm going to excuse the 13 of you and ask you to return and assemble in the jury room at 2:30 this afternoon.